Imagine being labeled a terrifying, bloodthirsty mad monster by global history books simply because you fiercely refuse to surrender your wealthy kingdom. But the truth behind this terrifying label was far more complex, and it began with a single fateful decision. One brilliant African queen single-handedly expelled the greatest global military superpowers of the 19th century. She achieved this impossible victory using absolute fear, a highly disciplined army, and the lethal, unforgiving tropical geography of her isolated island. The powerful British and French empires arrogantly believed they could easily swallow her massive, wealthy tropical island. They expected a quick, effortless colonial conquest, assuming an African nation could never resist their advanced gunpowder and iron warships. Instead, the greedy European invaders faced a highly paranoid, fiercely brilliant political mastermind who completely weaponized her entire nation. She transformed Madagascar into an impenetrable fortress, ready to violently repel any foreign threat that approached her shores. Her legendary name was Queen Ranavalona I, the absolute, ruthless protector of sovereign Madagascar. She was determined to shield her people from foreign domination, no matter the cost, setting the stage for a decades-long bloody clash. When she inherited the royal throne, foreign missionaries were already rapidly eroding her sacred, ancient culture. They were quietly converting the population, which threatened to destroy the spiritual foundation that held her unified Malagasy kingdom together. She recognized that religious influence was merely a deceptive Trojan horse, designed for absolute colonial conquest. By dividing her people, the European powers hoped to weaken the kingdom's resistance and easily seize control of their valuable tropical land. The fearless African queen immediately canceled all deceptive foreign treaties and demanded absolute, total isolation. She declared that Madagascar would stand completely on its own, cutting off all trade and communication with the outside European world. She violently expelled greedy European diplomats and aggressive merchants, forcing them to completely abandon their wealthy coastal settlements. Any foreigner who refused to leave faced immediate death, sending a clear message that her sovereignty was non-negotiable. To protect her tropical homeland from the inevitable colonial retaliation, she aggressively built a massive standing army. Over 30,000 highly disciplined Malagasy soldiers were trained, armed, and stationed along the most strategic entry points of the island. She utilized incredibly harsh, systematic internal purges to eliminate any potential threats to her absolute authority. Traitors, conspirators, and those secretly plotting with foreign powers were swiftly and brutally executed, ensuring total loyalty across her entire administration. Desperate European historians furiously labeled her a mad queen because she completely outsmarted their highly decorated generals. They could not accept that a black woman had defeated their empires, so they painted her as a bloodthirsty tyrant instead. She cleverly weaponized the brutal tropical geography, letting deadly diseases naturally slaughter invading foreign armies. She knew the dense jungles and swampy coastlines were filled with malaria, which acted as a natural shield against the vulnerable European troops. When an arrogant French navy attempted to attack her strategic eastern port of Tamatave, she unleashed absolute bloody hell. Her shore batteries opened fire, catching the warships in a devastating crossfire and tearing their wooden hulls to splinters. Her fierce, disciplined warriors completely decimated the invading foreign forces upon the sandy tropical beaches. The French soldiers who managed to land were quickly surrounded and cut down in close combat, leaving no survivors to retreat back to their ships. But that wasn't the real strategy behind her defense. She brutally mounted the severed heads of defeated European soldiers on tall wooden warning spikes. This terrifying sight along the coast served as a grim warning to any approaching warship. This terrifying, bloody display successfully ensured no foreign navy dared to attack her shores again for years. The message was clear. Madagascar belonged to its people, and any invader would meet a gruesome, public end on the tropical sand. Refusing to rely on European trade for survival, she brilliantly forced her kingdom into a rapid industrial revolution. She knew that true independence required economic self-sufficiency, so she gathered local artisans to build an industrial base from scratch. She constructed massive local factories to independently manufacture heavy weapons, gunpowder, and strong iron chains. Under the guidance of a French captive, her people learned to smelt iron and produce modern munitions, completely bypassing the European blockade. And this is where everything changed. As the ingenious queen created a completely self-sustaining African empire without any greedy foreign colonial assistance. But her success only made her enemies more desperate, and a dark plot was quietly brewing. But something was about to go very wrong. Legend claims she even designed massive iron scissors to literally slice arrogant foreign invaders perfectly in half. She was prepared to use any psychological weapon to terrify her enemies and maintain control. She demanded absolute, unquestioned loyalty from every subject, using a deadly ancient poison test to expose hidden political traitors. Suspects were forced to ingest the toxic tangina nut, and only those who survived were declared innocent. While her methods were undeniably brutal and terrifying, her absolute ultimate goal was preserving true national sovereignty. She knew that any sign of political weakness would allow the British or French to immediately invade and enslave her people. She watched neighboring African nations fall helplessly to European empires while her island remained free. She saw the rapid expansion of colonial rule across the continent and resolved that Madagascar would never suffer the same tragic, subjugated fate. For over 3 agonizing decades, the mighty British and French empires were completely locked out of her kingdom. Their diplomats were ignored, their merchants were banned, and their militaries were repeatedly humiliated by her brilliant isolationist policies. They desperately tried to assassinate the brilliant queen, but she constantly outmaneuvered their pathetic spies. Her royal agents infiltrated foreign conspiracies before they could begin, neutralizing every threat with cold, calculated precision before it could reach her palace. She surrounded herself with fiercely loyal royal guards who would gladly die for their monarch. These elite warriors were handpicked for their bravery and devotion, forming an unbreakable shield around the queen that no assassin could ever hope to penetrate. Her impressive intelligence network intercepted foreign communications, always keeping her 3 steps ahead of her enemies. She knew what the European generals were planning before they even boarded their ships, allowing her to prepare her defenses perfectly. The colonial superpowers were deeply humiliated by a brilliant black woman they considered entirely inferior. They could not understand how an isolated island could resist their massive global empires, and their frustration turned into bitter, racist propaganda. She maintained complete economic and political dominance over the entire massive island until her death. Her rule was absolute, Her factories were productive, and her borders remained closed, proving that Madagascar did not need Europe to thrive. She proudly died in her sleep, completely undefeated by the furious, greedy global European superpowers. Her long reign ended peacefully in her royal palace, leaving behind a free nation that had defied the greatest empires of the 19th century. After her passing, cowardly successors quickly undid her massive life's work and surrendered to French forces. They reopened the borders, signed unequal treaties, and allowed foreign influence to flood back in, leading to the eventual colonization of the island. But Ranavalona proved that absolute, true independence often requires making terrifying and deeply unpopular decisions. She chose to be feared rather than loved, recognizing that survival in a colonial world demanded absolute, uncompromising strength. She willingly became a monster in European history books to remain a protector of Madagascar. She accepted their hatred and insults, knowing that her historical legacy was a small price to pay for the freedom of her people. Modern historians are finally recognizing her as an unparalleled mastermind of absolute fierce anti-colonial resistance. They look past the colonial propaganda to reveal a brilliant leader who successfully defended her sovereignty against overwhelming odds. She completely shattered the arrogant colonial illusion that African nations needed European governance to survive properly. Madagascar's independence proved that a self-sustaining African state could govern itself, manage its economy, and defend its borders without foreign interference. Her spectacular independent factories proved that indigenous innovation could rival massive global industrial European powers. Her people manufactured weapons, tools, and textiles without importing foreign components, showing the world the true power of African self-reliance. History often deliberately ignores incredibly powerful black women who successfully defied massive global colonial empires. Their stories are buried under centuries of Eurocentric narratives, but Queen Ranavalona's legacy is too massive to be forgotten by time. But the legendary fortress of Queen Ranavalona still commands absolute respect in modern historical records. The ruins of her palace stand high above the capital, a powerful physical reminder of a queen who refused to bow to any empire. She remains the greatest symbol of unapologetic African sovereignty against totally ruthless European imperial expansion. Her story inspires modern generations, demonstrating that even when facing the world's greatest powers, resistance is always possible. She was entirely unbothered by the immense odds stacked heavily against her isolated island kingdom. She ignored the threats of foreign fleets and the warnings of her own advisors, relying instead on her strategic brilliance and iron resolve. When cowardly men hesitated, this magnificent queen grabbed power and demanded absolute respect and submission. She took control of a fractured court, united the noble houses, and established a centralized rule that kept Madagascar stable during a global crisis. Her brilliant political strategy perfectly mirrored the elite tactical minds of history's greatest state builders. She balanced diplomacy, military strength, and economic independence, navigating the complex geopolitical landscape of the 19th century with absolute mastery. She boldly shattered unbreakable ancient traditions, fiercely protecting her sacred African civilization from ultimate ruin. She modified laws, reformed the military, and restructured the economy, showing that tradition could be adapted to serve the survival of the state. The British Empire learned a bloody lesson about the terrifying strength of an uncompromising queen. They realized that Madagascar could not be bought or intimidated, and their respect for her defensive capabilities kept them from launching a full invasion. Her incredibly brave warriors sacrificed everything to fiercely protect their sacred homeland from greedy foreigners. They stood watch along the coast, marched through malaria-infested swamps, and fought with unmatched ferocity to keep their families free. This immortal story of defiance desperately needs to be fully taught in modern schools all around the world. It challenges the false narratives of colonial superiority, showing that African leaders were active, successful agents in history's greatest conflicts. She absolutely guaranteed their rich cultural heritage would proudly survive completely untouched for coming centuries. Because of her fierce defense, the language, traditions, and customs of Madagascar remained intact, passing down to future generations. The fearless African queen stands eternally victorious over the broken ruins of massive colonial arrogance. Her reign proved that a determined nation, guided by a brilliant leader, can stand against the world's most powerful empires and win. Stories like this were never meant to be widely known. To discover more hidden historical legends of strategic genius and fierce resistance, absolutely smash that subscribe button and keep watching Throne and Dust now.